Alrighty. Good afternoon, everybody. Couple minutes later than usual here, 5:45. Moneyline MMA live, coming to you guys with the results of UFC Vegas 85 and picks and bets for UFC Vegas 86. Of course, UFC's coming with back-to-back cards from the Apex Center, and last weekend, Jose 5-0 streak. What a home run. Jose stepped up to bat last week, got Randy Brown, Moicano, Imavov, Silva, and the dog, Charles Radke. You love to see it. I had a great day as well. I was 3-2, but my 5, 4, and 3 weights all hit. It was only my 1 and 2 weight that did not. So if you're going to lose any picks, you might as well lose the ones you had the least confidence in. For me, it was my disagreements with Jose of Drew Dober and Dolidze. We briefly talked about it before the fight. Drew Dober just gets wrestled. And Dolidze, for the same reason that he was my one weight, I kind of foreshadowed the fact that he just wasn't going to be able to contend with Imavov striking, and he wasn't going to factor in the wrestling enough. Simple as that. Imavov takes the win, calls out Strickland. Seemed a little weird, but in any case, Jose and I are both continuing to be above 500 this year on all UFC cards. Let's continue with the hot streak of Money Lions 10 picks last week. We were 7-3. Let's continue moving forward. And then, of course, in a lot of part, thanks to Jose. Or excuse me, we were 8-2. I did that wrong. We were a lot of that thanks to Jose still, though. But in any case, UFC Vegas 86. We got Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer, starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with prelims. Usual start time as last weekend. And we're going to bring you guys our 5 picks again. Just as a quick reminder, we pick 5 fights from the entire card. There are 14 fights on UFC Vegas 86's slate. Jose and I pick 5 of those fights. A lot of times they do end up usually being the main card fights and maybe one prelim sprinkled in here or there. But in any case, we pick 5 and weigh them. 5 weight is the heaviest, most confident weight. 1 is the least confident weight of the 5 that you chose. Therefore, we're going to start off, as always, with my 5 weight selection of Saturday afternoon. I'm targeting an early addition to this fight card in general. And this is going to be Ihor Potieria versus Robert Brychek. This fight is occurring at the middleweight division, and it is a late addition to our card here. In fact, for that reason, we don't even have odds on it. You're not going to see this fight on many betting sites like DraftKings or FanDuel or anything like that. So why am I taking Brychek? Well, look, we can just look at one main thing, and it's conditioning. Ihor Potieria has multiple times now gassed out, and he's just lost his fights against marginal at best competition in the UFC. His only UFC win being a washed up, sorry to say, washed up, gassed out Shogun Mauricio Rua last year in 2023. I got a lot of respect for Mr. Shogun, but he lost multiple fights at the end of his career, and Potieria just so happened to be one of the lucky bunch there. To me, this is much more of a pick against Potieria than it is for Brychek. But at least we can say one thing. If this fight goes out of the first round, I have full confidence in Robert Brychek to get the job done. Hence, he is my 5 weight. Of course, we got to be careful when betting a whole bunch of money on a guy. So let's see what the odds are when the line is released. Get Brychek, though, as early as possible. He has been dominating people in his previous organization, and I think that has likeliness to continue, at least at the lower end of the UFC. So 5 weight for me, Robert Brychek in the feature bout. Last point on this, he's the feature bout. The UFC is very clearly trying to push this guy, right? They're trying to give him a name. They're trying to raise fans. How often do they have a guy that has not even fought in the UFC as a feature bout? And not to mention he's fighting a guy that's 1-3 in the UFC. So I'm just saying, the one and only thing that Brychek might not have is experience. But hey, the total fights, they both have over 20 professional fights. I don't know, man. I got Brychek here. 5 weight, very confident. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, Nick. So for this fight, I agree with you. I'm going with Robert, but I actually did not put a weight on this fight because I didn't look at the update. It was just one of the fights I didn't choose, and I it was added a little later, and I just didn't get time to kind of go back and look at the new updated fight. But that being said, yeah, you made some solid points about Robert. I just really can't give much of an opinion again because I didn't look too much into this fight, but I would agree with you, Nick.
Sounds good. Well, that does it then for the 5 weight pick. We'll move on to Jose's 5 weight pick.
Yeah. So for my five way, this fight is the fight between Gregory Rodriguez and Brad Tavares. And right now, Brad Tavares is the my bad. I got mixed my betting right
He's
now.
a underdog. Tavares.
Underdog right now. Brad Tavares. Yep, I see it now. My bad.
You're
Yeah,
good.
Brad Tavares is the betting underdog at plus 200, while Gregory Rodriguez is the betting favorite at minus 265. This one, I'm going with the favorite RoboCop. He's coming off a first round KO via elbows against Tennis Tuliulian. And Brad Tavares, he's coming off a win against Chris Weidman. And to be honest, when I look at Brad Tavares, it's like he's seen a lot of people. He's been in the UFC for a while now, and he's fought Izzy Adesanya, Duplessis, Edmund Shabazian, and Robert Whitaker. So he's seen the who's who, Yoel Romero back in the day. He's seen a lot of names in the UFC, and all those names that I just listed also beat him. So he's one of those guys where he loses to those people like dudes that go on to become bigger stars. So Gregory getting a win over Brad Tavares would put Gregory in the right projection to be a legit threat in the middleweight division. And Brad Tavares' win over former middleweight champ Chris Weidman most recently last year in August, it was a unanimous decision win, but to be honest, it doesn't say much to me. Chris Weidman is old now, and since 2015, he's lost way more than what he's won, and dude's pretty much washed up and should just retire. But that's enough of that. Like Brad Tavares, this is a fight where I see Gregory Rodriguez should win. He's got the power. Out of his 14 wins, 9 of them come via KO. He's a big guy, not too big compared to Brad Tavares though. He's 6'3". Brad Tavares is 6'1", and Gregory Rodriguez only has a 1-inch reach advantage. And I like him a lot. He has his striking too is just far better than Brad Tavares. As I would say, he's got power and he lands pretty much 6 significant strikes per minute. But he does absorb quite a bit. I think he had that really bad cut that one time too. So he's a tough guy, and he wanted to keep going, but the fight needed to stop. And when it comes to the grappling department, I think RoboCop is also the better grappler. He doesn't have as many submissions on his record, but he is going to be the one more likely to engage in a takedown. His takedown average is 2.4 per 15 minutes versus Brad Tavares 0.81. So, and Gregory has 100% takedown defense. I just overall think Gregory Rodriguez is the better fighter here. I honestly, like I said, I think it's gonna be one of those dudes where we can probably see Gregory Rodriguez in the top 5 at some point. A lot of guys that fought Brad Tavares that he's lost to have gone up that path, and a lot of dudes that Brad Tavares has beat have not. They actually are just one of those dudes that just kind of been lingering in the later 10s to 15s or unranked. So that being said, my case rests right there that I have a strong feeling about RoboCop. Gregory Rodriguez is my 5-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
I also have. I just want to make sure I wasn't muted. I also have RoboCop. 4-weight for me. Pretty confident in RoboCop as well. And the odds are showing it, man. He's a pretty heavy favorite here. I think it's for a good reason. I also one thing I don't think you mentioned about Brett Tavares is he's really slow. Like I'd like to take the over 2.5 rounds on this fight. Brett Tavares I'm not suggesting it as an official bet. I'm just kind of mentioning it that I'm thinking about an over maybe. Don't I hesitate because RoboCop's kind of been on a really good streak, and multiple of RoboCop's fights lately have ended early and would have went under the rounds. But what I'm getting at is Brad Tavares, if he's going to win the fight, it's pretty much going to be by decision. He was able to knock out well, technically knock out Krzysztof Jocko back in 2018, halfway through the third round. I'm not as impressed by that back in 20. So to me, Brad Tavares doesn't really pose that much of a threat. I think RoboCop much more power behind his striking, and he just lands more. Like straight up, his strikes landed. Sure, he absorbs a lot of damage, but I'm just not sure Tavares is going to be ready to keep up and dish the damage back. So I'm with you, man. Gregory Rodriguez should be able to get the job done here. I understand Tavares has an extensive history against good fighters in the division, but he's gotten beat by every single one of them. So until he actually beats somebody good, like, I'm not sure how far the experience takes you, to be quite honest. So 4-weight for me on RoboCop. So 4-weight on Mr. RoboCop. I think Jose might have froze there. That brings up my 5-weight, Jose's 5-weight, and then I guess also my 4-weight by proxy. Jose, are you with us? I think he froze. Jose has lost connection. That's fine though. I can continue as always. Moving on, moving forward. Moneyline MMA brings heat no matter what. Jose or I, whoever's here, is ready to bring heat. So let's go to my 3-weight. Just to quickly recap. My 5-weight, Robert Brychek, the feature fighter of the night on his UFC debut. Jose's 5-weight, RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. Then my 4-weight, also Gregory RoboCop. So far we've covered these 2 fights. I'm going to bring up my 3-weight next. For my 3-weight of Saturday afternoon, we're looking at a middleweight bout. I'm pretty excited for this bout. Of course, talking about there are a couple of other middleweight. There are a couple of other middleweight fights on this card here. Oh, we got your back, Jose? I see you, but I don't hear you.
Sorry about that. Had some connection issues here.
Oh, no, you're all good, man. You're all good. I was just bringing us on. I kind of just wrapped us up there and brought us on to the main event. That is my 3-weight of the afternoon. I believe you have a pick on it as well. But I was just bringing up the middleweight main event of the night, Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer. The reason everybody will be watching. And Jack Hermansson's coming off of a tough loss against who we saw in the main event last week. Also take a loss, Roman Dolidze. UFC math will say that Joe Pyfer takes the win. And UFC math never works. But guess what? I'm still taking Joe Pyfer. He's my 3-weight here. Joe Pyfer's just... He's really good overall, I feel like. Jack Hermansson's kind of more of like a land some strikes to set up a takedown kind of fighter. And against a fighter like Chris Curtis, he wasn't able to land one. 0 for 6 takedowns, but still gets the win. So you got to respect some of his striking ability because Chris Curtis really is a great boxer. And going into this handicap, I was thinking, like, I don't even understand how the odds aren't crazy in Pyfer's favor. Right now, Pyfer's minus 230, so he is one of the bigger favorites on the card, but I couldn't imagine why it wouldn't be even more. But that does make sense. Hermansson does have a very good striking differential, so he can hold his own, but in the end, Joe Pyfer, I think, has the strength. It's very clear that he's a little taller, and he's got the wrestling advantage too. There was one thought, right? He was doing all this wrestling before the UFC, and then he goes into the UFC and he just keeps knocking people out. And I think some people were thinking, does he have the wrestling chops? And he goes in and submits Abdul Razak Al Hassan, arm triangle in the second round, beat him up. And I get that Abdul isn't like a stud by any means, but I don't know, man. I was impressed enough by that to feel like Joe Pyfer's better in both categories. If Jack Hermansson gets Pyfer on his back, that's of course not ideal. But I'm not concerned that Pyfer is a bigger frame and he can get up. So Joe Pyfer to me is a pretty stable 3-weight pick. Jose, what do you have?
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you. I have Joe Pyfer. He is my four-weight, and you said it best. When it comes to the grappling, I do think, Hermansson is known to be a good grappler himself. But yeah, I think Pyfer. I think his grappling is just, it's definitely well enough, more than just well enough that he can be able to hold his own and secure a takedown against Jack Hermansson. I think he's going to be the stronger guy as well. The one thing that Jack Hermansson I see has over Joe Pyfer is just the slight reach advantage, a 2.5 reach advantage. But when it comes in, and he does throw a good amount of significant strikes per minute, 5.13. So I always, to me, those guys are just always like something to look out for. Just who has a long reach advantage and has a high striking rate. Someone like Max Holloway as well, and Izzy Adesanya. So that being said, I think Joe Pyfer is going to be more than tough. And if he throws a high percentage of strikes himself with 3.64, and again his grappling, I think he's going to probably be the one to get the first takedown in this end. Probably, I don't know if this fight's going to go the distance, so I can see him getting either early KO or a later submission later in the rounds, in the like second to third. So that being said, I feel strong about Joe Pyfer. I agree with you. I have I have him as my four-weight.
Okay. Getting a couple agreeances here with the Money Lion squad. You don't always get that. A lot of times we disagree, just like we did on a couple fights last week. Jose got the best of me in those, but hey, it's not always worked that way. But yeah, sounds like we both agree on Joe Pyfer. I think he should, I think he should get the job done here. They're both really good fighters, but I think Jack Hermansson's more of just kind of the gatekeeper, where Pyfer's really kind of the next guy up. Potentially, at least after. I mean, there's a lot going on in the middleweight division, but could have a title shot soon. So that was my 3-weight, your 4-weight. Let's go into your 3-weight, Jose.
Yes. So for my 3-weight, this is the featherweight bout between Dan Ige and Andre Fili. Right now, Dan Ige is the betting favorite at -186, while Andre Fili is the betting underdog at +144. For this one, I really like Dan Ige. 50K Dan Ige. He is coming off that unanimous decision loss to Bryce Mitchell. And that being said, before that, he was riding a 2-fight win streak, getting a KO himself. And he's got the power, and he's still in a good position, For a while, Dan Ige, he was looking really hot, but then he got 3 losses in a row, got 2 wins, and now losing again to Bryce Mitchell. Andre Fili, in my opinion, is a fight he should win. Andre Fili is looking really good coming off that first round TKO against Lucas Almeida. But this one, I'm riding with 50K. And, when it comes to striking on the feet, it's going to be a close one. I think Dan Ige carries more power behind his punches than Andre Fili, though. And that being said, I think Dan Ige in this one, I feel strong about him. When it comes to the grappling, Andre Fili, he may be slightly the better grappler. Dan Ige has more submissions, though, just a couple more than him. But when it comes to takedowns, Andre Fili has a 2.19 takedown average per 3-round fight, while Dan Ige is at 1.07. But both guys have over a 50% takedown defense. But their wrestling is going to be more than well enough. So I think it's going to be a really close, a really even, skillful match. The one thing I think Dan Ige will have is just more power. And Andre Fili has been KO'd in the UFC before. So most recently TKO in the first round to Joe Anderson and Brito. But that was in 2022. So it's been a minute. That being said, I got Dan Ige. He is my 3-weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
Seems like we're going to keep agreeing tonight, because I also have Dan Ige. It's funny because he's my 2-weight, so one less weight again than your pick here. But I like Ige in this spot. I think he's by far the best talent that Andre Fili is going to have fought, at least in quite some time. Andre Fili is 2-2 in his last 5 with a no contest in between. I mean, he's just really not that impressive. Not too many big names. I mean, I guess he beat Charles Jourdain, but we're talking about something he's done just about 4 years ago, and it was still a split decision win after landing 5 takedowns. I think Dan Ige, even if he gets taken down, he can get back up. He was able to. I mean, I guess it depends on your opinion, because Bryce Mitchell still had 7.5 minutes of takedown or control time, but I felt that Dan Ige did a great job of mostly, at least, getting up against Bryce Mitchell and one of the better wrestlers in the division. So what I'm trying to build here is the handicap to say that Dan Ige is going to stay on his feet, and he's either going to get the technical knockout or a unanimous decision win against Andre Fili, because he's very clearly the better boxer. And I don't think Fili is going to get him to stay on the ground even if he gets the takedown. So yeah, Dan 50K Ige, I'm pretty confident in that.
Yeah, for sure, and not much for me to say on this fight, Nick. I'm, I guess that I'm set. I'm good to move on to my two weight.
Yeah.
And so, yep, there you have it. Both Nick and I have Dan Ige. He is my 3-weight, and he is Nick's 2-weight. And now for my 2-weight, this is the matchup between Darius Flowers and Michael Johnson at lightweight. Right now, Michael Johnson is the betting favorite at -146, while Darius Flowers is the betting underdog at +114. You know, for this one, I'm actually going to go with the underdog, Darius Flowers. And the reason is he's the younger guy. I haven't really seen much of him. He did just come off a second-round submission loss to Jake Matthews. And before that, he had a win via TKO on Dana White's Contender Series. So he's not been in the UFC long. But for this one, I see value in him just because Michael Johnson, he's already 37 years old, and he's been on a roller coaster as of lately, but mostly on the losing side. He has wins over Mark Diakasi and Alan Patrick, but both of those were in 2022. Michael Johnson has just not been as active. You know, he's last fought in May 2023, and that was that second round KO punch. And out of his losses, his KOs, he's only been knocked out 3 times, but when it happens, they're pretty bad. And Darius Flowers, out of his 12 wins, 8 of them come via KO. So if he were to get a win, you know, he's a young guy going against a much older dude, and Michael Johnson has mileage on him. You know, he's got wear and tear. I can see Darius Flowers just absolutely going beast mode and possibly putting out Michael Johnson. So I see that a lot of value in that. But again, it is a high risk because Michael Johnson could just pull off a vet move and get a unanimous decision win. So that being said, I'm taking the risk and going with Darius Flowers. I do see value in him as an underdog, but not that confident. So that's why he's my 2-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
I was going to put Darius Flowers low on my weights. I ended up moving him off for Robert Brychek. I like Darius Flowers as well. I'd usually be the one sitting here talking about Michael Johnson and him being undervalued, but I'm proud of the public for giving him his flowers. He's the favorite in this fight. Of course, it's partially because Darius Flowers has very little to no UFC experience. I think he's got 1 fight in the UFC before, when he fought Jake Matthews. So that's partially why you're seeing Michael Johnson as a favorite. And we could talk about all day long about how he's fought all these champions, blah, 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 blah. But in the end, I think his knockout loss to Diego Ferreira was really the nail in the coffin, so to speak. And I'm sad to say it, but yeah, I think Darius Flowers is just going to confirm that for us on Saturday.
Yeah, fair enough. And for what it is, even with Darius Flowers losing his official UFC debut, he still put up some good numbers for what it was. Thus far in the UFC, he has 4.19 significant strikes landed per minute, compared to Michael Jackson's overall 4.28. Darius Flowers did absorb a lot of damage in that fight, though. But also still sporting 100% takedown defense, and I don't really see Michael Johnson trying to wrestle Darius. This is definitely going to be a striking match on the feet, and Michael Johnson, he has a slight 1.5-inch reach advantage, but I don't think that'll be a problem at all. He's also a 1 inch taller, but again, I don't think that's going to matter much. I do think Darius Flowers, I'm low confident in it, but I have him as my 2-weight, and I honestly will keep my options open to him possibly getting a knockout. Michael Johnson hasn't been knocked out that many times, but again, he's just older. He's older. He has a younger guy that, just still figuring out who this guy is in the UFC. So, that being said, Darius Flowers, my two weight.
And then we got one more fight for you guys left before we sign out for the afternoon. That fight will be the main card opener. Armen Petrosyan versus Rodolfo Vieira. This is your classic, traditional clash of styles. You have your pretty much specific to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master versus your stand-up striker. And the question to me lies in whether you think Rodolfo Vieira will get a takedown. I think if he gets a takedown, Armen Petrosyan's night will be pretty quick to be over, unless it's late in the round. But Armen Petrosyan is very, very far and away the better striker. And Vieira, when unable to land takedowns, like against Chris Curtis, he failed 20 takedown attempts. Didn't make one work. And he loses the fight. Rodolfo Vieira needs the takedown, and Armen Petrosyan ought to know that. I've lost a lot of respect for Armen Petrosyan and his team if he isn't in this fight ready to try to be taken down and to smack him, to knee him, to do whatever you need to do when he's trying to come in for the takedown. Petrosyan, to me, has a very clear path to victory. Rodolfo Vieira does too, but it involves, in my mind, what shouldn't be easy, which is taking down Petrosyan and getting on his back. So, yeah, that being said, it is my one weight, but Armen Petrosyan should get the job done against Vieira.
Yeah, Nick, I agree with you 100%. I actually have Armen Petrosyan as my one weight as well. And as you said it, whoever dictates their game plan is going to win it. I can see, very possible Vera gets a win via submission or Petrosyan TKO or KO. I'm liking Armen Petrosyan getting that TKO/KO just because he's also, again, a theme of mine is, again, he's slightly the bigger guy, 3 inches taller in this one. He doesn't have a long reach advantage. He actually has a disadvantage at 2 inches, but when it comes to the striking, Armen arguably the better guy, and that's where all the fights start, is on the feet. And if it goes to the ground, Armen can just get up. It's he lands 5.97, so basically almost 6 significant strikes per minute, and he actually only absorbs 3.03. So that's a pretty good striking differential right there. While Vera, he only lands 3.36 and he absorbs 4.84. So clearly the stats show that Armen is the superior striker, and I don't really think Armen's gonna be getting any types of takedowns against Rodolfo Vieira. But if this fight goes to the ground, I don't know how long Petrosyan is gonna want to entertain the idea of staying on the ground. I truly think he's probably just gonna try to do like a Sean Strickland and Derek Lewis and just try to stand up and just force it on the feet. He's clearly the guy with more power behind his punches as well. So I like the chances of him catching Rodolfo Vieira and possibly making it an early night. So this is a fight I also think is most likely to not go the distance. I got Armen Petrosyan as my one way for this one, Nick.
Sounds good, man. All right, well, that brings it to a conclusion for us here at Moneyline MMA. We've discussed 6 fights tonight, and just as a quick recap, I'll quickly run through our weights. My 5-weight, Robert Brychek. 4-weight, RoboCop, Joe Pyfer, Dan Ige, and Petrosyan. Jose's got RoboCop, Joe Pyfer, Dan Ige, Darius Flowers, and Petrosyan as his weights. Therefore, your Moneyline MMA lock of the week will be RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. Make sure to put some money on him because that will be a winner. Thanks for listening. Have a great afternoon. We will be back next week for the big one. Also, keep in mind, we only have one heavyweight fight for the next couple of cards. And unfortunately, That involves Justin Tafa fighting Marcus Rogerio de Lima. Can we get some action in the heavyweight division, Dana? All right, that's all. I just wanted to get that off my chest. Have a good afternoon, guys.